not hit the branch. Hey sewing friends, how's it going? My name is Monica and welcome to Comicat Creations. In today's video, I'm actually updating a sewing tutorial I did several years ago showing you how to make a basic skater skirt just because I wanted to give the tutorial kind of an update and refresh. I wear these skirts all the time and I've made so many of them and they're really quick and easy to sew, so I hope you enjoy the project. And I'd like to say thank you so much to LA Finch Fabrics for giving me the fabric to make this project with. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, and I would love it if you'd subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And what are we waiting for? Let's go ahead and get sewing. To make this project, you'll need a 4-way stretch knit fabric, and it is really important to use stretch fabric so that you can get the skirt on and off since we're not using a zipper. I wound up using about a yard of fabric for mine, but if you want a skirt that's any longer or larger, I'd suggest getting at least 2 yards, that way you're not as limited on the length you can make it. And I'll list all the sewing supplies you'll need in the description below the video, so make sure to check that out before you start so you have everything on hand. To begin, decide where on your waist you want the skirt to start and measure around that part of your waist. I wanted mine to start at my natural waist, so that's where I measured, and I got 31 inches. Add 1 inch to that number for seam allowance, so I got 32 inches, and write your number down for later. Fold the longest side of your fabric in half and smooth it out, and make sure that this top edge is cut in a straight line so that you have a perfect right angle at the corner. For those of you who have never made a skater skirt, it's made by cutting out a half circle shape, and we have to do a couple of quick calculations to be able to draw out that shape. First, plug in the waist measurement you wrote down earlier, which was 32 inches for me, and divide it by 3.14. I got about 10.2 for this. Then subtract a ½ inch from that number, which builds in the seam allowance we'll need to sew the skirt to the waistband later, and the number you get will be used to draw the waist of the skirt. I got about 9.7 inches total. Go to the corner of your fabric where that straight top edge meets the folded edge and measure from that corner to make a mark at the number you just calculated. So my mark is at about 9.7 inches. Swivel the tape measure down a little while still holding it at the corner and make another mark at that number, and then continue that process of measuring from the corner and marking all the way down the fabric. When you've created a quarter circle shape, connect those marks with a curve and cut along that curve to cut out the waist of your skirt. Now decide how long you want the skirt to be, and you can do this by measuring from the point on your waist where you want the skirt to start and ending wherever you want it to end. I wanted a length that hit a little above my knees at about 19.5 inches. Then add 1 inch to your number for hem and seam allowance, so I got 20.5 inches total for my length. Go back to your fabric and place your tape measure starting at the curve of the waist and measure to make a mark at the number you just got for length. Move the tape measure down the curve slightly and make another mark at that number, and repeat that process all the way down the fabric too. The length I wanted fit perfectly with the amount of fabric I had, but again, if you wanted a longer length or larger size, you'll definitely want more fabric so you have more room to work with. Just like before, connect those marks with a curve and cut along that curve to cut out the bottom edge of your skirt, and when you open up the fabric, you'll see that you have a large half circle shape cut out. Fold the skirt in half with the correct side of the fabric facing together and pin and sew along the straight edge using a ½ inch seam allowance for all your seams. Since we're using stretch fabric, use a ballpoint needle and sew all your seams and hems with either a stretch stitch or a zigzag stitch, either of which will allow your seams to stretch without breaking, versus a regular straight stitch which would break when stretched. I always suggest testing a few stretch and zigzag stitches on a scrap seam of your fabric to see what works best, because I do find that sometimes one stitch may work great on one type of stretch fabric but not so great on another, so testing a few lets you see what works best for your fabric type. I used a triple stretch stitch for all my seams. And if you try a few different stitches and all your seams turn out wavy, you may want to try a walking foot because I found that with a little practice using it, it can help seams lay flatter if your fabric gives you a hard time. And now that your skirt is sewn together, you can set it aside for now. To make the waistband, cut out a rectangle that measures the same size you originally wrote down for your skirt's waist, mine was 32 inches, by 5 inches wide, and make sure to cut it so that the fabric is most stretchy in the direction the arrows are going, so the waistband will stretch the most going around you once it's done. Fold it in half with the correct side of the fabric facing together and pin and sew along the short end, and then move that seam over so that you can open up and flatten out the seam allowance, which will help it lay more neatly. Then fold the waistband in half by bringing the top edge down to meet the bottom edge, just like this, and repeat this all the way around the waistband so that the entire thing is folded down in half. To attach it to the skirt, turn the skirt inside out and keep the waistband right side out, and place the folded edge of the waistband so that it's facing down. Then position the seam on the skirt so that it sits at the very center back of the skirt, and do the same with the waistband seam as well. Next, open up the skirt's waist and slide the waistband into it so that the correct sides of the fabrics face together and all the raw edges line up. Grab those seams that are on the back of both pieces, line them up, and pin them together, making sure that all the seam allowances are opened up and flattened out and that you're pinning all 3 layers of fabric together. Then pin the pieces together in smaller increments around the rest of the waist by lining up all the raw edges and pinning them every few inches, and I like to use a lot of pins for this to make sure that none of the layers will move around when I go to sew them. When you finish pinning, sew around the waist to join the pieces, and when you're done, the waistband is attached and we're almost done. The final step is to hem the bottom edge of the skirt. To do this, turn it inside out and fold the bottom edge over about 1/4 inch, then fold it over again another 1/4 inch so the raw edge is no longer visible, and pin it down. Double fold the next section about 1/4 inch at a time as well, and use your finger to smooth out the fabric so it lays nice and neat around the curve, and pin it down too, and repeat this around the entire bottom edge. Smoothing out the fabric as you go is really important to help get the stretched fabric to sit nicely since you are folding around a curved edge, and pinning frequently will help it all stay in place. When you finish pinning, sew around the bottom edge to secure the hem, again using a stretch or a zigzag stitch, and just like before, I suggest testing a few stitches on a scrap hem of your fabric to see what works best. When I was testing stitches, all my hems looked a little wavy, so I switched my regular presser foot out for a walking foot, which I'm using here, and that helped the hem sew flatter. I don't have that problem much with stretched fabric, and usually my regular presser foot does fine, and it has taken me a bit of experimenting to get the hang of using a walking foot, but it is something I like having on hand now since I do sew with a lot of knits. You can see here that the final hem looks nice and smooth, and as a comparison, here's the scrap hem without the walking foot. And like I said, this isn't something that happens much for me, but I will leave some more info about the walking foot in the description just in case you want to try one too. And now that your hem is complete, your skirt is ready to wear. This is a great quick project that I've made in several colors, so I hope you enjoy making it too. Thanks for watching and happy sewing! I could just catch a break in the chainsaw, man. Oh.
I know.
There have been chainsaws and all kinds of noise, so I need to actually get it done while I have 2 seconds of quiet. Okay, I got this.